Most people think BlackBerry lost its crown because the iPhone introduced a touchscreen. But the real killer was something deeper: a stubborn refusal to abandon physical keyboards and a proprietary operating system that couldn't support a modern app ecosystem. In 2013, BlackBerry had 85 million subscribers and a market cap of over $50 billion. By 2018, that number had collapsed to near zero. The decline wasn't gradual, it was a cliff, triggered by a single strategic failure. But here's the twist. BlackBerry's leadership knew the iPhone was a threat. In 2007, co-CEO Mike Lazaridis dismissed it as a niche product and a fashion accessory. That quote would haunt them because it revealed a mindset that refused to adapt. How did BlackBerry reach such heights? By 2013, the company boasted 85 million subscribers worldwide, a figure that seemed unassailable. In 2009, 1 in every 5 smartphones sold globally was a BlackBerry. Revenue had climbed to nearly $20 billion. The empire appeared unshakable. So how did such a dominant force fall so far? The seeds of destruction were planted in 2007 when Apple launched the iPhone. BlackBerry's co-CEO Mike Lazaridis dismissed it as a niche product, a fashion accessory. The company chose to double down on its physical keyboard and proprietary operating system. That decision seemed reasonable at the time. BlackBerry's keyboard was beloved by professionals who valued speed and precision. BBM was a cultural phenomenon. But while BlackBerry polished its physical keys, Apple and Google built app ecosystems. By 2013, BlackBerry's App Store had only 70,000 apps, compared to over 800,000 for iOS and Android. So why did BlackBerry dismiss the iPhone as irrelevant? In January 2007, Steve Jobs unveiled a device with no keyboard, no stylus, just a glass screen. BlackBerry's co-CEO, Mike Lazaridis, watched and scoffed, calling it a niche product and not a smartphone. But the early market seemed to prove him right. The iPhone sold modestly at first, while BlackBerry's subscriber base swelled to over 30 million. Corporate IT departments loved the physical keyboard and secure email. To them, the iPhone was a toy. Yet beneath the surface, the iPhone was quietly redefining what a phone could be. Its touch interface and growing library of apps began to attract consumers. BlackBerry's leadership, however, remained convinced that their keyboard and proprietary OS were superior, a fatal miscalculation. So why did BlackBerry double down on the keyboard, even as the iPhone's touchscreen gained traction? The answer lies in a 2008 decision by co-CEO Jim Balsillie, who declared, "We are going to double down on what we do best." That meant physical keyboards and secure email, not glass screens. That bet produced the BlackBerry Storm in 2008, the company's first touchscreen phone. But it was a disaster, plagued by a buggy clickable screen that frustrated users. Return rates soared, and the Storm became a symbol of BlackBerry's inability to execute on touch. Meanwhile, the iPhone's app ecosystem exploded. By 2010, Apple's App Store had over 300,000 apps, while BlackBerry's App World limped along with fewer than 10,000. The gap wasn't just in quantity, it was in quality and developer interest. BlackBerry's platform was becoming irrelevant. So why did the app gap matter so much? Because by 2013, the smartphone was no longer a phone. It was a platform. And a platform without apps is like a city without shops, empty. BlackBerry's App Store offered just 70,000 apps, while iOS and Android each boasted over 800,000. That's a ratio of more than 10 to 1. The problem wasn't just quantity, it was quality. The apps users wanted most, Instagram, Snapchat, Spotify, either never came to BlackBerry or arrived years late, buggy and stripped down. Developers simply didn't see a market worth building for, and without those apps, consumers voted with their wallets. This was the real killer, not the keyboard. BlackBerry's hardware was fine, its software ecosystem was hollow. Users didn't leave because they hated typing on glass. They left because their friends were sharing photos on Instagram, and BlackBerry couldn't run it. The platform became irrelevant, not the keys. What was BlackBerry's last hope? By 2013, the company knew it was in trouble. Its final gamble was the Z10, a touchscreen phone running a brand new operating system called BB10. The company bet everything on this device, hoping to finally compete with the iPhone and Android. But the gamble failed spectacularly. The Z10 sold poorly, and BlackBerry was forced to write down $934 million in unsold inventory. The user base, which had been 85 million in 2013, plummeted to 46 million by 2014, then to 30 million in 2015. That wrote-down inventory wasn't just a financial loss, it was a symbol of failure. The app ecosystem BlackBerry had neglected was now a chasm. Without apps, even a great phone was useless. The collapse was accelerating, and there was no stopping it. So why did nobody stop the slide? Because by 2016, there was nothing left to stop. BlackBerry's global market share had fallen below 1%. The company that once dominated the smartphone world had become a rounding error. The stock price told the same story. From a peak of over $140 in 2013, it plunged to under $10 by 2016. Investors had lost faith. The company's handset business was burning cash with no hope of recovery. In September 2016, BlackBerry finally admitted defeat. It announced it would stop making its own phones, licensing the brand to a Chinese manufacturer instead. The era of the BlackBerry handset was over. The empire had fallen. So what does BlackBerry's fall teach us? That the real killer wasn't the keyboard or the touchscreen, but the failure to see the smartphone as a platform. When the ecosystem shifted, BlackBerry built a walled garden and refused to open the gates. And in the end, the garden withered. But the story doesn't end in 2016. BlackBerry still exists. As a software company, it pivoted to cybersecurity and automotive software, and today its market cap is over $4 billion. The hardware is gone, but the brand lives on, a ghost in the machine of a world it once dominated. But BlackBerry's failure wasn't just about missing apps. It was baked into the company's culture. Research in Motion, as it was known, was run by engineers who loved hardware. They believed their keyboard was a competitive moat, and they poured resources into refining it rather than building software. This culture created a false sense of security. BBM, BlackBerry's messaging service, was so addictive that users called it the crackberry. Executives saw BBM as an unassailable advantage, ignoring that it was a closed network. Only BlackBerry users could talk to each other, so they doubled down on enterprise customers who loved BlackBerry's security. But the enterprise market was slow to change. By the time IT departments accepted iPhones, BlackBerry's consumer base had already evaporated. The company had bet on a shrinking island. Meanwhile, developers flocked to iOS and Android. BlackBerry's development tools were clunky, and its App Store approval process was slow. By 2012, BlackBerry had only 60,000 developers, compared to millions on other platforms. Without developers, the app gap became a chasm. So BlackBerry built BB10, a new OS from scratch. But it launched too late, in 2013, years after Apple's and Google's platforms had matured. Worse, BB10 couldn't run Android apps natively. BlackBerry tried to woo developers with cash, but the ecosystem was already dead on arrival. But even the Z10's launch was sabotaged by carriers. AT&T, Verizon, and others had grown tired of BlackBerry's arrogance. They pushed iPhone and Android devices instead, offering BlackBerry minimal shelf space. The company that once commanded carrier loyalty was now an afterthought. By 2013, the founders were ousted. New CEO John Chen took over, but his mandate was to cut losses, not revive phones. He killed consumer hardware and pivoted to software. The decision was rational, but it sealed the fate of the handset business. And so the handset business died, not with a bang, but with a whimper. In 2016, BlackBerry licensed its brand to TCL, a Chinese company. The phones that followed were forgettable. The BlackBerry name still appeared on devices, but the soul was gone. The lesson for every company is clear. Disruption doesn't announce itself, it whispers. And if you're too busy defending your castle to listen, you'll find the walls have crumbled around you. BlackBerry's fall is a cautionary tale, not about keyboards, but about the arrogance of success.